92 to 95 FM, 810 medium wave, and on digital radio. BBC Radio Scotland.
And this is Good Morning Scotland with Gary Robertson and Laura Maxwell. The time now 24 minutes to 8. The health services of England, Wales and Northern Ireland could learn lessons from the Scottish NHS, according to a new report. The Nuffield Trust found that Scotland had a unique system for improving the quality and safety of patient care. But it also warned the service here is potentially facing much deeper financial cuts than the NHS in England and Wales. Mark Diane is the report's author and joins us now. Good morning, Mark.
Good morning.
Good news, bad news. Let's start with the good news. What are we doing right?
So I think the areas where other health services in the UK could really learn from Scotland are largely around improving safety and quality. The Scottish NHS has a very well thought through model for doing that it's stuck to for some time, and it really focuses on reaching the doctors, the nurses and the frontline managers who work with patients every day, training them up in the kind of skills that improve what they're doing, and reaching them and motivating them. Whereas certainly in England, where the Nuffield Trust does so much of our work, the approach to improving quality and safety tends to try and go through managers, through organisations. There's not always a very clear idea about, once you've said something good should happen in the English NHS, exactly what it is that's meant to happen to actually cause change to happen in a way that matters for patients. Mm-hmm. So I think there are important lessons to learn there.
So, from what you're saying then, that there's an awful lot more trust in staff who are allowed to take a much more active role in how policy is played out. But your report also talks of a toxic political culture making decision-making difficult. How does that then tie in?
Well, I wouldn't say it's simply about trust in staff. It's about, when the Scottish NHS asks itself, how are we going to improve quality and safety of care on the front line, things like reducing infections after surgery, they really focus on changes that make sense to staff and on giving them the skills to change and adjust what they do in a way that improves things. But as you say, that does sit alongside at a much wider national level, a political culture which is very oppositional, which is almost permanently in a pre-referendum mode, where difficult decisions can seem almost impossible. So I think that's at a very high level of national politics. The picture isn't necessarily the same for individual clinicians.
But how is that playing out on the ground? Did clinicians give you any examples?
I think the most important thing is not at the individual clinician level. It's so the Scottish NHS, much like its counterparts in England and Wales, has a programme of trying to do more outside hospital. And in the long run, I think that's a good thing. There are schemes that are proven to be able to do better for less by treating patients in their homes or in GP surgeries instead of them going to hospital. But it does mean that at some point money and possibly beds will have to come out of hospitals. And what I heard from a really huge range of the people we spoke to in Scotland, from clinicians right up to quite high levels of the NHS leadership, is a real worry that the political culture and the media culture is so oppositional and difficult in Scotland that those difficult decisions about shifting some things out of hospitals, which are often services local people care about an awful lot, might be very tough to make.
Well, what about budget pressures then? I wonder, is Scotland in a stronger position to deal with budget pressures, given that our NHS doesn't have massive multi-billion pound debts?
So what you're thinking of there presumably is the deficits that the English NHS has run up.
£700 million?
That's not exactly a debt, it's more of a sort of overspend. But I think it's worth saying that Scottish health boards are certainly facing very similar problems. Because the Scottish system isn't so marketised, it doesn't tend to come out in quite the same way, but certainly Scottish boards have been relying more and more on one-off savings to try and meet targets. Some of them have been falling short and needing extra funding from the Scottish Government. So the issues there are very, very similar. And indeed, looking into next year, or rather this current year that started in April, the NHS in Scotland appears to have even higher financial savings targets than the English NHS, and many of the same issues about whether that can be delivered.
How does that come out, though? Because Audit Scotland found that the Scottish NHS had a surplus of £4.5 million at the end of 2016, even though it had overspent budgets in every month of the year.
So the ways in which it comes out will obviously vary from health board to health board. For some of them, it will be about relying on one-off savings to meet the need for savings each year. So, for example, selling something off, reorganising something in a way that delivers savings in 1 year but doesn't really improve the underlying position. And the issue with that is it's just not sustainable in the longer term. In other places, of course, financial pressure is likely to mean pressures on waiting times, and already Scotland has been struggling to meet the 18-week commitment to see patients once they've been referred from their GP into hospital.
So overall, the general report card is doing well but could do better. Is that it?
I think the Scottish NHS has some really important strengths, particularly in quality and safety improvement, also in the way that it's worked on getting different bits of its health service to work together over the last few years. But the danger is that the financial situation now is so severe and so difficult, with not that much yet in the way of a medium-term plan for dealing with it, that it threatens to actually undermine some of those strengths that I think people in Scotland are rightly quite proud of.
And is there anything that we could be learning from health services elsewhere?
Yes, so I think something that the English and Welsh NHS have done, that the Scottish NHS is looking at doing at the moment, is having a sort of medium-term plan for who needs to make which savings when. And that'll do a number of things. It'll make sure that everyone in the Scottish NHS is on the same page about how much money needs to be saved and what the implications are for what hospital services you can keep, which is something that I've found people in different areas of the NHS in Scotland have quite different views on. And it'll also, I think, open up for a very important discussion with the public on the fundamental question of, in the medium term, do we want to give the NHS in Scotland more money, or do we want it to do less? Because those are the only options. And I think that England and Wales have begun to face up to that.
Mark Diane from the Nuffield Trust, many thanks.
The time is 18 minutes to 8. Let's turn to business news again. Graham Stewart is here. You're talking interest rates this time.